I'd like to welcome you here on behalf of the Kindertransport Association and the Kupferberg Holocaust Center at Queensborough Community College. My name is Arthur Flug. I'm the Executive Director of the Holocaust Center, and we are delighted to have you here today. Thank you so much. In fact, we have a situation here where if I was really desiring to raise money for the center, I could auction off 3 empty seats that are right here. So one, we got a winner. Come over. Please come over here. Today is a very, very special day. And to get into today's program, I would like to introduce the president of the college, Dr. Diane Cole.
Thank you, Dr. Flug. Welcome to Queensborough. For those of you for whom this is a first visit, we are a wonderful college, but this is an extraordinary center. And we're so appreciative that you've come to recognize the incredible experience of Kindertransport and to recognize the incredible generosity of Great Britain in leading this effort that managed to help a few of the so many children who were at risk and unfortunately who were suffered with the Holocaust as a result. Today's exhibit reflects an incredible generosity of a country who itself was under siege. And unfortunately, it didn't occur in sufficient countries, clearly. Otherwise, 1.5 million children may have been saved. But we're grateful for the role of Great Britain in this effort. And we're so pleased to have with us Her Majesty's General Consul Danny Lopez with us. And for all of you, welcome. Thank you. I'll turn the program back over to Dr. Flug, and again, thank you so much for joining us on this day.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Cole. When we talk about the Kindertransport, we are in an unusual situation. In 1961, when I became a social studies teacher in the New York City school system, when we talked about the beginnings of democracy and freedom, we started the year 1215. At a field in Runnymede in England where a group of English barons and King John got together to sign what was called the Magna Carta. And that became the start of what we call the democracy and freedom movement in Western civilization. However, when we talk about democracy and freedom in terms of what we do here at the Kupferberg Holocaust Center, we don't go back to 1215 to a small field in England. We start off with the Kindertransport. Because something unusual is within the Kindertransport. As Dr. Cole said, as all of you probably know who have already seen our exhibit, 10,000 Jewish children survived because Great Britain said, we will let you in. The United States did not say, we will let you in. France did not say that, and so many other countries did not say it. And I always think that if we had a situation where 100 nations said come in, or 50 nations said come in, then the number 6 million really would have no meaning. Think of all of the people who could have been saved had they simply said yes to the children, you could come in. It did not happen. And because it did not happen, we are here in a Holocaust Center to study what happened because other nations wouldn't say that. So our course today is to do several things. Number one, to remind those of you here, although you really don't need reminding, what took place during World War II to the community, the Jewish community in Europe, and also to show that in a situation such as that, people were willing to come forward and say, we will step up when no one else has stepped up. So today is not a way of saying, we want to give you a lesson. Today's our way of expressing our appreciation. And I'd like to call up the president of the Kindertransport Association, Kurt Goldberger. Kurt Goldberger is also a member of the Holocaust Center here at Queensborough Community College. Kurt?
Good afternoon, and thanks for the introduction, Arthur. I want to give you a brief history of how the Kindertrans came into being in 1938. All of you must be familiar with Kristallnacht, when practically every synagogue in Austria and Germany was torched, when 30,000 Jewish men from the age of 16 up were imprisoned in concentration camps, when practically every Jewish store was rifled. In other words, it was the beginning of what was to happen later on. How did this come about? Members of the Jewish community in England, together with non-Jews, had been in touch with the leadership of English in England and found out that the Prime Minister, Neil Chamberlain, who is really remembered for some not so famous things that he did with Czechoslovakia, but he was amenable to the idea that children could be saved. Kristallnacht took place on November 9th to 10th, 1938. Within 10 days, the British Parliament, the House of Commons, was visited with Sir Samuel Hoare, the Foreign Minister, when leaders of the Jewish community and the Christian community, particularly Quakers, met with them and decided to do something about letting children come to England. They didn't want adults because they had the same problems as the United States. There was a depression at the time, and they didn't want competitive jobs going to foreigners, but they felt children could be taken in. It was at that meeting on April 19th that they suggested to bring this before the House of Commons, and was brought before the House of Commons on November 26, 1938, and voted that we let in an unspecified number of children to come to England. The only provision that there was that a £50 ransom, so to speak, had to be left with the British for re-emigration. Subsequently, after some of the kinders had left, this was rescinded, and this was no longer requested. Anyway, the House of Commons voted to let the unspecified number of children to come to England. The first transport left Berlin on December 2nd. And between December 2nd, 1938, and September 1st, 1939, just under 10,000 mainly Jewish children came to England and were welcomed by the British. They wound up in various places with families, sponsoring them in hostels, in agricultural camps, and many other places. Most of them had a fairly good experience. There were some poor experiences where they were exploited, particularly some of the older girls were being used by some families as domestic servants. But in general, they were welcome and spent their youth there and eventually became part of the British community. Many of the boys wound up in the British Army. At first in the only place that would let the refugees be in the Pioneer Corps, which I call the Pig and Shovel Corps. But eventually they were accepted into the British Army. Let me just briefly tell you that today in the House of Commons is a plaque which was dedicated by the Kindertransport Association of North America and the English group, Return of Kinder, they were called, represented us in 1999 at our 60th anniversary of the Kindertransport. Let me briefly tell you my own story. I was born in Vienna in 1925. Now I can figure out how old I am if you're good in math. And fortunately, my parents had tried to get me out somehow, and I was rejected somewhere But through the Jewish community in Vienna, I was finally picked, I don't know why, as one of the individuals who was sent to England. And I left Vienna on a significant significant date in American history. I left July 4th, not knowing what it was about really, of 1939, to go on a train. My mother had preceded me to England as a domestic servant on a train to England, which left Vienna in the evening, and the compartments were locked. We couldn't get out of the compartment. We stopped at some stations in Germany when they opened the doors, not for us, but for regular passengers. We could see them, but we couldn't, our windows couldn't be opened. Until we got to the Dutch border near Aachen, and the German officials came on the train, and they made sure that we didn't have any valuables, because all you were allowed to take with you was equivalent of 10 marks, about $3, and that's it, in that small suitcase. I remember in the train, the German officials came into our compartment and asked some questions. Among them was, anybody tell me what time it is? So each one of us looked at the watch. And it didn't occur to me much later why. They wanted to make sure we didn't have any gold watches on us, that we didn't try to smuggle something out of Germany. Anyway, we got back, they left, the train took off and stopped in Holland. I don't remember the name of the town it stopped in, but all I know is they opened the doors, they opened the windows. The Dutch ladies were there waiting for us with cookies, with hot chocolate, and we were suddenly in freedom. And we couldn't believe it. So we went on to Harriet, to Hook of Holland, got a ship to go across the English Channel, which was kind of shaky, but wound up at Harwich and then at Liverpool Steel Station, where we were met by our sponsors, whoever they may have been. My sponsors were the family my mother worked for. Happened to have been a Jewish family who, through their congregation, sponsored me to come there. But when I got there, my mother was there with the lady she worked for, took us back to where she worked, but I couldn't stay there because domestic servants have no children. So I wound up instead of staying with my mother in a hostel in Croydon, England, which is just outside of London, and was evacuated with my school once the war broke out, and subsequently wound up with my mother in Leicester. And my father fortunately got out of Vienna and was safe, came to the United States. I would only tell you that we talk about 10,000 children whose lives were saved. It isn't just 10,000 children, because today there wouldn't be 80,000 people if we weren't freed by Great Britain, because we would have been killed like so many others. And I must tell you that the vast majority of the children never saw their parents. I was fortunate. We were separated, but we were together. But I don't want to keep you any longer, because some of my fellow kinders, we still call ourselves kinder, although we're getting on in age, we still want to talk to you about. Thank you for listening to me.
Take a look over there. Take a look. I want you. Okay. Thank you, Kurt. One of the programs we have at the Kupferberg Center that really aids not only those of you who are here, but our students in understanding and remembering what took place during the Holocaust is our survivor group. And our survivor group works with our students very, very intimately. And I'd like to call up Anita Weissbort. She is the vice president of the Kindertransport Association. She participates in two programs we run at the Holocaust Center. One is called Bagels and Talk. It's only for Holocaust survivors, and it runs on the theory that if I supply the bagels, you will supply the talk. And it's a walk-in program for survivors. And we get together and talk about anything and everything. But one of the offshoots of the program is our internship program. And we have student interns who are trained and assigned to Holocaust survivors. Now, I want to call on Anita Weissbort to please come up and tell us a little bit about her story.
Thank you. I was born in Vienna, Austria. I was the youngest of three. I had a wonderful childhood. Anything a child needs. Loving parents, a lot of aunts and uncles, friends, and Vienna is a beautiful city. Went on vacation like any happy child, until Hitler marched into Austria on March the 13th, 1938. Well, the Austrians claimed that they were the victims. Let me tell you, there were no victims. They welcomed Hitler with open arms. They had the armbands ready with the swastika, and they marched on the street and they chanted, Hitler erwecke, Jude verrecke. That means Hitler awake, Jews perish. Just imagine, overnight, you become a non-person. You have no rights. Now, Hitler was already in power in Germany a few years, so every year more laws came out. You couldn't go to school, you couldn't go to university, you couldn't go to a movie, couldn't sit on a bench in the park. Well, in Austria, within 24 hours, it was in place. If you left your home, you didn't know if you came back. It was friends. Where your friends were afraid to talk to you. Your neighbors shunned you. It was very hard to understand how overnight people can turn like that, and they surely did. Then came Kristallnacht, Crystal Night, where they burned all the synagogues, they looted the homes and businesses. They came into our apartment, arrested my father, who ended up in Dachau concentration camp, smashed some furniture and helped themselves to whatever they want. We had very nice things in our home. Now, you would think you called the police. You couldn't. There were one of them. There was absolutely nothing you could do. My mother realized she has to do something. She has to save the children. My brother was already in his early 20s. They were coming for him. So he went illegally to France. Well, in Europe, you need identity papers. He had none. One day, the police stopped him, and they were going to send him back. You can just imagine what would happen. He joined the French Foreign Legion and ended up in Africa. I remember distinctly my mother and my aunt having a violent argument. My aunt had 4 children. My aunt called my mother a rotten mother. How can you send your children away? How can you do that? Do you know, until I became a mother, did I realize they were both right. What does a mother want to do? Hold your children close. But I truly believe I was born twice. When I was born, and when mother had the strength and the foresight to send me out on the Kindertransport. Now, I have to tell you the day I left. It was March the 13th, 1939. I only remember the date because it was the 1-year anniversary of Hitler marching into Austria, and they were marching on the street, so I thought they're giving me a send-off. We were at the train station. I'm inside the train, the windows tightly closed. My mother is outside. For 4 agonizing hours, the train stood there. I'm inside, my mother outside. I couldn't step away from the window because I was afraid if I step away, I would lose her forever. Do you know, that's over 70 years ago. To this day, I cannot stand anybody seeing me off. It left that impression. But when you're young, you're resilient. When we were going, we were thinking, what's going to happen? Going to England, Nobody knew what England was like. Remember, there was no internet, no television. We had no idea where we were going. And most of us didn't speak the language. So it was a frightful experience. But Kurt told you how we came to Holland, and the Dutch people welcomed us. And in England, I came to an elderly lady. They were supposed to send you to school and take care of you until you're 18 years of age. But she didn't send me to school. She wanted me as a companion. Very, very kind lady, and I had very good time with her, and I had to learn the language. I went to church twice on Sunday, and people were very kind, very wonderful. Because the lady who took me in didn't only want to save my life, she wanted to save my soul, for me to accept Jesus Christ as my Savior. But if I would have been younger, would have been so easy. A new country, a new language, why not a new religion? But I was old enough, I was 15, I knew who I was. So that was no problem for me. But the people were so wonderful, so kind. And most of the children had wonderful experiences and are still in touch with their foster families. 1.5 million children perished. And I'm so lucky to stand here to tell you I'm alive and had a wonderful life. Thank you.
Thank you, Anita. Thank you so much. Now, let me introduce the other half of the equation to you. One of our students, last semester, we had a group of 14 students who volunteered to be interns at the Kupferberg Holocaust Center. They would meet with me once a week. We would go into study the Holocaust in detail. We would then go learn procedures for interviewing Holocaust survivors, and then each student would be assigned to a survivor. And they had amazing stories to tell. The one that is the most memorable, and the one that I could share with you in the fastest amount of time, one of our students, young lady, calls me and said, I called the survivor. I'm at her house now. I'm sitting in the kitchen, and she wants to fix me up with her grandson. Okay, we were able to. I said, "Tell him you're not Jewish. Don't worry. That solved the whole thing." But our students, I tell them, you're not really interns. You're insurance policies, because our interns are required not only to study about the Holocaust and not only to interview a survivor. They are required to promise the survivor that they will retell their story, because we have made a pledge to our survivors that their stories will not be forgotten, that they will not be forgotten. And because we've made that pledge, our students have followed through that. I've asked one of our students to join us today. I want to give you a little background on a student. The name of the student is Karishma Mia. She is now attending Barnard, correct? Graduated. She is studying psychiatry, and she, in the year 2006, came from Saudi Arabia and interviewed Margaret Goldberger, who is one of our leading survivors from the Kindertransport, Kurt's wife. Margaret, you stand up so everybody can see you and who you are. We thank you. And Karishma, you're here with your mom today. So Commissioner, would you like to come up?
Graduate yet. Good afternoon, everyone. Firstly, I would like to thank Dr. Flug. He did make a mistake, though. I haven't graduated from Barnard yet. I'm going back. I have to do 2 more years, and then I have to do 4 more years if I want to be a psychiatrist. Well, I first walked into the center in February 2012, knowing all the historical details about the Holocaust, but knowing very little about what this clean, empty, pristine building would stand for. 5 months later, I walked away with a story that is so powerful, I can never find the words to reiterate it. Ms. Goldberger's story, I'm sure if she's going to talk about it, she's going to tell you her experiences herself, but I'll stand here and tell you what her story meant to me. Her story gave me new knowledge. To me, history, which was merely a story, from her story became an experience. It became reality. It became history experienced through the eyes of the people for whom history was reality. Her story gave me restlessness. Her story was the drop of water which I got to drink from an ocean of water that I never will. Her story was a flicker of an experience that I merely got to glance at, and the whole of the experience I never will. Her story gave me faith in humanity's ability to persevere and humanity's ability to flourish, and today stand so powerfully here and surround us everywhere. Her story gave me fear in humanity, who is able to perpetuate this amount of inhumanity against itself. Her story gave me anger. I'm angry that justice, even if these people have survived, will never be tangible to these people. I'm angry that every single one of us continues or contributes to this vicious cycle of violence. A lot of us are unaware. A lot of us are also dissonant. We don't know that our actions, our indifference itself contributes to people suffering. And every single one of us is usually unrepentant. But most importantly, her story gave me determination. It gave me determination to keep this memory alive, to do my part in fighting injustice, to do my part in providing justice, to do my part in providing compassion, but most importantly, to never repeat by always remembering. Thank you.
Thank you, Karishma. That will give you some idea of the level of students we have here at Queensborough Community College. And now, for presenting the award, I'd like to say something in calling up Margaret. Would you like to come up, please, Margaret?
Okay, thank you. The program that you have in your hands is not exactly accurate. These things happen. Anyway, I quickly want to tell you my story. I was born in Berlin, Germany. As already was mentioned, that things progressed slowly in Germany as far as Jews were concerned. But my father was also arrested on Kristallnacht and taken to a concentration camp. My mother got notice that our store and our apartment had to be vacated before the end of the year, leaving everything there, my father's tools, our inventory from the store, and all of our furniture had to be left behind. My mother was desperate. She found out about the Kindertransports. She had been told by the American consulate, for which we had an affidavit, that it would take 2.5 years before an immigration permit, a visa, could be issued to the family. That she didn't tell me. But she said, you know what, we'll be going to America soon, but first I've registered you for a children's transport to England. I'd taken some English lessons, so I looked at it as a bit of an adventure. How hard was it for the parents to let the children go? And I have a little sample here of that. Hold on a moment. When my mother passed away, she left a lot of documents and things. And one of the things she left, which I only found recently, because, you take things into your home and you put them in a box. It says, when Margaret was 13 years old and had the hair cut, I kept it since to remember her for going to England. And this is what she kept. And I just found this a few weeks ago. This is my hair, my natural color. When I left Berlin in 1939, and to me this symbolizes so much what the parents had to go through to let their children go, and this was just a little bit of me that my mother kept. So I came to England also in 1939. I lived in a hostel sponsored by B'nai B'rith. I also lived with a family briefly and so on. And altogether, our stay in England was a good stay. As Kurt already mentioned, a few people didn't have such a good time, but we were all saved, and I'm happy that I was one of those children. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. Thank you. And before we present our award, I would like to say why we are presenting this award. When we decided to host the Kindertransport, it would have been, I guess, adequate to say we're opening an exhibit, come in and see it. But just remembering is not enough. We believe that you have to take appropriate action, and we felt the appropriate action was to say thank you. Thank you to the people of England, the people of Great Britain, who really stepped forward and helped save 10,000 children. And so what I did was I sent a letter to the British Consulate's office in New York, in Manhattan, making the offer. And we got an immediate response. It was a most gracious response. Claire Rissman from your office immediately got back to us, and if you don't want her to work for you, I'd be glad to hire her. Absolutely wonderful. Got back to us. We talked about it. We planned it. She came here, and Consul-General Lopez came in, most gracious. In fact, we went through a ceremony. I gave him a Zachor pin that he wears on his lapel saying, remember, and he gave me the Olympic pin that he's wearing on there. So I told him the last time I pinned someone was 46 years ago. It was my wife. However, we are most gracious and most delighted that he is here today. And I'd like you to come forward. And Dr. Cole, would you join us? And the award reads as follows. The Kindertransport Association and the Harriet and Kenneth Kupferberg Holocaust Center and Archives present the people of Great Britain for trumpeting the call to freedom when all others were silent, the Kupferberg Holocaust Center Freedom Award.
Do tell me if you can't hear me. If I suddenly go away from the microphone, just give me a sign. Well, first of all, Dr. Flug, Dr. Kohl, the Kindertransport Association, all of you, thank you so much for, well, A, the plaque and the recognition, but for inviting us here today. I'm deeply humbled to be in front of all of you this afternoon. And it really is a privilege to accept this award on behalf of the British people. The Holocaust is one of the bleakest episodes in human history. The number of victims, incomprehensible. The depth of inhumanity, unjustifiable. And the tragedy and suffering, unimaginable. Yet in the darkest of places, light often shines brightest. The Kindertransport story is one of those bright lights, reminding us that action, compassion, and charity can make a difference. Working with the community and charities and with the will of the British government and British Parliament, ordinary people across Britain rallied to the cause to support the 10,000 Kinder who came to the UK. I am humbled, as I say, to be surrounded by so many survivors today and delighted that the Kinder survived and excelled to become highly valued members of the British society, with many of them making the UK their permanent home. The Kinder grew up to have lives both ordinary and extraordinary. Parents, grandparents, teachers, soldiers, farm workers, business leaders, even Nobel Prize winners, 4 of them. The UK is all the better for them. As revolted as we are by the events of the Holocaust, atrocities in our time in countries such as Bosnia and Rwanda show that there are still lessons for humanity to learn. In 1949, Theodor Adorno, a leading German critic whose faith in humanity had been irrevocably shaken by the Holocaust, made the following declaration: "After Auschwitz, it is barbaric to write poetry. Silence is the only appropriate response to the tragedy of the Holocaust." His response was, of course, understandable at the time, but now we recognize the value of the approach of places such as here, at the Harriet and Kenneth Kupferberg Holocaust Resource Center. The number of people who can provide first-person accounts is shrinking, and the lessons of the Holocaust must be remembered. The UK recognizes the importance of Holocaust education, and today it is part of our national curriculum. The majority of English students learn about the Holocaust and the events of World War II in such a way as to ensure future generations really understand the horror of what took place and the lessons for the future. The Prime Minister appointed a UK envoy for post-Holocaust issues to add new impetus to the government's work, ensuring that we continue to support those working to right past wrongs and remain at the forefront of the global debate. I really am moved by the efforts of this centre and the Kindertransport Association, and I salute the commitment of the community to tackle hate crimes, prejudice, racism, and stereotyping. Through your good work, the lessons of the Holocaust reach the next generation, ensuring that, to paraphrase Elie Wiesel, the past of Holocaust survivors does not become anyone else's future. Thank you so much again.
Thank you, Consul-General Lopez. We're most grateful for you being here. And please, for those of us who were here as this part of the program has now come to an end, you're invited to come and view our exhibit. We'll be open until 5 o'clock today. Thank you so much for coming. Yeah, wait, oh, yeah. I've just been reminded that in the course of the exhibit, there will be a film showing regarding a ceremony that took place in England regarding the Holocaust and the Kindertransport. Thank you again.